My dad sued me for $50,000 because I wouldn't evict my tenants for his stepdaughter. She ended up in jail and their marriage destroyed itself. The apartment building that destroyed my family. I never thought I'd be writing this, but I need to get this off my chest and maybe get some perspective on whether I'm the villain my family is making me out to be. I'm James, 29M, and this story is about how my hard-earned success became the catalyst for the complete implosion of my relationship with my father and his new family. It started with what should have been a proud moment, buying my first investment property, and ended with restraining orders, eviction proceedings, and a family torn apart by greed and entitlement. Let me give you the backstory. My parents divorced when I was 15. It was messy, mainly because my dad had been having an affair with his secretary, Carol. The divorce financially devastated my mom, who had been a stay-at-home parent for most of my childhood. Watching her struggle to rebuild her life while my dad immediately moved in with Carol taught me some harsh lessons about financial independence and self-reliance. I started working at 16, first at a grocery store, then adding a weekend job at a warehouse when I turned 18. While my friends were partying in college, I was pulling 60-hour weeks, living on ramen, and saving every penny I could. I didn't go to university, couldn't afford it, and couldn't stomach the thought of student loans. Instead, I got my real estate license at 21 and started learning the business from the ground up. For 7 years, I worked as a realtor during the day and drove for a rideshare company at night. I lived in a studio apartment in the worst part of town, drove a 15-year-old Honda Civic, and wore the same 5 suits on rotation for work. My social life was non-existent. Dating? Forget about it. Every dollar that wasn't absolutely essential for survival went into my savings account. Meanwhile, my dad remarried Carol 3 years after the divorce. Carol brought her daughter Emma into the marriage. She was 14 when they got married, making her my stepsister, though we barely knew each other. I saw them maybe 3 times a year at obligatory family gatherings. Dad tried to play happy families, but I kept my distance. I was cordial but never close, especially after watching how he'd treated my mom. Emma grew up very differently from me. Carol had received a substantial divorce settlement from her first husband, and my dad was doing well in his corporate job. Emma went to private school, got a brand new car for her 16th birthday, and attended an expensive out-of-state college for a degree in fine arts. She graduated 2 years ago, moved back home, and has been finding herself ever since, posting Instagram photos of her artwork that, from what I can tell, hasn't sold a single piece. 6 months ago, I finally hit my goal. I had saved enough for a down payment on a small apartment building. It wasn't fancy, a 4-unit building in a working-class neighborhood that needed some work. But it was mine. Well, mine and the bank's, but you get the idea. I spent 3 months renovating it myself, working nights and weekends, YouTubing how to fix everything from leaky pipes to broken tiles. By September, I had all 4 units rented out. 3 were 1-bedrooms renting for $1,200 a month, and 1 was a 2-bedroom going for $1,500. The rental income covered the mortgage, taxes, insurance, and left me with a small profit that I was putting aside for future repairs and eventually, another property. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I could breathe. I even upgraded from ramen to actual groceries. Then came Christmas dinner. The Christmas ambush. I should have known something was up when Dad insisted I come to Christmas dinner this year. Usually, I could beg off with work as an excuse, but he was particularly insistent, even offering to pay for my gas to drive the 2 hours to his place. It's been too long since the whole family was together, he said. Red flag number 1. I arrived at their McMansion. Yes, they lived in one of those gaudy 5,000-square-foot houses while I'd been living in a 400-square-foot studio, and was greeted enthusiastically by Carol. Too enthusiastically. Red flag number 2. Emma was there, of course, looking like she'd just rolled out of bed at 3 p.m., which she probably had. She gave me a half-hearted hey, before returning to her phone. Normal Emma behavior, so no red flags there. Dinner started normally enough. Carol had made an elaborate spread, and we made small talk about work, the weather, and other safe topics. Then, over dessert, Dad cleared his throat in that way that meant he was about to make a speech. James, he began, his voice taking on that fake jovial tone he uses when he wants something. We heard about your apartment building. Congratulations, son. That's quite an achievement. Thanks, I said carefully, wondering where this was going. You know, Carol jumped in, Emma's been having a tough time lately. The art world is so competitive, and it's just impossible for young people to get started these days. I nodded politely, still not seeing the connection. Dad continued, we were thinking, since you have that building now, and family helps family, maybe Emma could move into one of your units. Just temporarily, of course, until she gets on her feet. There it was. The ask. I took a deep breath before responding. All my units are currently rented, Dad. I have tenants with leases. Oh, but surely one of them will be moving out soon? Carol said. These people always do. They're probably behind on rent anyway, right? The casual classism in her voice made my jaw clench. Actually, all my tenants pay on time. And their leases don't end for at least 6 more months. 6 months is perfect. Emma suddenly piped up, apparently interested now that free housing was on the table. That gives me time to prepare my portfolio for the gallery showing in the summer. What gallery showing? I asked. She waved her hand vaguely. Oh, I'm planning to approach some galleries. You know, once I have a proper space to work. Your 2-bedroom unit would be perfect. 1 room for living, 1 for my studio. I nearly choked on my coffee. The 2-bedroom? That rents for $1,500 a month. Well, yes, Dad said, his tone becoming more serious. But surely you can afford to help your sister out for a few months. Consider it an investment in her future. Stepsister, I corrected automatically. And I can't afford to lose $1,500 a month in rental income. I have a mortgage to pay, Dad. Property taxes. Insurance. Maintenance costs. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Carol's smile became fixed and cold. Dad's jaw tightened the way it used to before he'd launch into a lecture when I was a kid. I see, he said slowly. So money is more important to you than family. It's not about that. Isn't it? Carol interrupted. Here we are, asking for a tiny favor, just a few months of help for Emma, and you're acting like we're asking for your kidney. Your father has done so much for you over the years. I couldn't help it. I laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. Done so much for me. Like what, exactly? I raised you, Dad said, his voice rising. Until you left when I was 15 to start your new family, I shot back. Mom raised me. Mom, who had to get a job at 45 with no work experience because you left her with nothing in the divorce. That's between your mother and me, Dad said coldly. And it has nothing to do with this situation. It has everything to do with this situation, I said, standing up. I worked 2 jobs for 7 years to buy that building. I lived on nothing, saved everything, and built this on my own. Without any help from you. And now you want me to just give away thousands of dollars to someone who's never worked a day in her life. Emma gasped dramatically. I'm an artist. That is work. Then it should pay for your rent, I said flatly. Update 1. The escalation, 2 days after Christmas. I thought that would be the end of it. An awkward family dinner, some hurt feelings, and then we'd all move on. I underestimated them. 2 days after Christmas, I started getting phone calls. First from Dad, leaving voicemails about how disappointed he was in my selfishness. Then from Carol, texts about how I was destroying Emma's dreams and potential. Then from random relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all with the same message, how could you refuse to help your sister? They'd launched a full-scale family PR campaign against me. The story they were telling was that I was a wealthy landlord, refusing to help my struggling sister who was on the verge of homelessness. Never mind that Emma was living comfortably in their McMansion with 0 living expenses. But the real escalation came when I got a call from Mike, one of my tenants in the 2-bedroom unit. Hey James, he said, sounding uncomfortable. I just had a really weird visit. A young woman came by, said she was your sister and that she'd be moving in next month. She wanted to measure for her furniture. My blood ran cold. What did you tell her? I told her she must be mistaken because we have a lease through August. But she was really insistent, said you'd promised her the apartment and that we'd need to be out by February 1st. My wife is pretty freaked out, man. We just had a baby. We can't be moving right now. I assured Mike that no one was moving in and that his lease was secure. Then I immediately called my dad. Did you seriously send Emma to harass my tenants? I demanded when he picked up. Harass is a strong word, he said calmly. Emma simply wanted to see her future home. It's not her future home. There are people living there. With a legal lease. Leases can be broken, he said. I've been looking into it. In our state, landlords can terminate a lease if they need the unit for family members. It's called owner move-in eviction. That's for the owner, Dad. Not the owner's stepsister. And even if it applied, which it doesn't, I'd have to give 60 days notice and pay relocation costs. You're talking about thousands of dollars. A small price to pay for family, he said smoothly. Besides, I'm sure those people can find somewhere else. People like that are used to moving around. The casual cruelty of that statement, people like that, made my decision for me. "Dad, listen very carefully," I said, my voice deadly calm. "Emma is not moving into my building. Not now, not ever. And if she shows up at my property again, I'll have her arrested for trespassing. If you continue to harass my tenants, I'll get a restraining order. Are we clear?" He hung up on me. Update 2. The nuclear option, 3 weeks later. After the phone call with my dad, things went quiet for about a week. I foolishly thought maybe they'd accepted reality. Then I got served with legal papers. My father was suing me. The lawsuit claimed that I had made a verbal agreement to provide housing for Emma and that she had suffered damages as a result of my breaking this agreement. They were seeking compensation for emotional distress, lost opportunities, and detrimental reliance. Apparently, Emma had turned down other housing opportunities based on my promise. The amount they were seeking, $50,000. I sat in my apartment, staring at the papers, feeling a combination of rage and disbelief. They were actually trying to sue me for money I didn't have over a promise I never made for an apartment that was already occupied. I called Laura, a lawyer friend from my realtor network, and asked for a recommendation for a litigation attorney. She gave me the name of someone she described as a bulldog, exactly what I needed. The attorney, Marcus, reviewed the case and actually laughed. "This is frivolous to the point of being sanctionable," he said. "They have no evidence of any agreement, no consideration was exchanged, and even if there was a promise, which there wasn't, promissory estoppel requires reasonable reliance, and no reasonable person would rely on a vague promise without getting it in writing, especially for something as significant as housing." "So what do I do?" I asked. "We counter-sue," he said with a grin. "For abuse of process, intentional infliction of emotional distress on you and your tenants, and defamation if they've been spreading false claims about you to family members." While Marcus prepared our response, I started documenting everything. I installed security cameras at the apartment building, with proper notice to tenants, of course. I saved every text, email, and voicemail. I asked my tenants to document any contact from my family. Good thing I did, because Emma escalated. According to my security footage and tenant reports, she showed up at the building 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. Once, she tried to convince my ground floor tenant, Mrs. Chen, an elderly widow, that I had sent her to collect rent early. Mrs. Chen, God bless her, threatened to call the police and Emma fled. The second time, she showed up with a U-Haul and tried to convince my newest tenant that there had been a mix-up and she was supposed to move in that day. The tenant called me immediately, and I called the police. Emma left before they arrived. The third time was the final straw. She showed up at 2 a.m., drunk, with a group of friends, and tried to break into the vacant basement storage area, claiming I'd given her permission to use it as an art studio. A tenant called 911, and this time the police arrived before she could leave. She was arrested for attempted breaking and entering, trespassing, and public intoxication. Update 3. The family explosion, 1 month later. Emma's arrest was the match that lit the family powder keg. Dad called me at 3 a.m. from the police station, screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. The gist, between the expletives, was that I had ruined Emma's life, that an arrest record would destroy her future, and that I was dead to him. I calmly informed him that Emma had ruined her own life by repeatedly trespassing and attempting to break into my property, and that she was lucky my tenants hadn't shot her, given that we lived in a stand-your-ground state. He hung up on me again. The next morning, I woke up to find that Carol had taken to Facebook. She'd written a long, dramatic post about how I had called the police on my own sister and chosen money over family. She tagged every relative she could think of, and even some of my high school friends she'd apparently stalked online. The post backfired spectacularly. My mom, who rarely uses Facebook, wrote a scathing response that detailed exactly how Dad had left us, how he'd hidden assets during the divorce, and how he'd refused to pay for any of my education while funding Emma's expensive art school. She ended with, "James built his success despite his father, not because of him. Any family that expects him to light himself on fire to keep others warm isn't family worth having." My tenants, who I'd added on Facebook for building updates, also chimed in. Mike wrote about how Emma had frightened his wife and newborn baby. Mrs. Chen described Emma's attempted scam. My other tenant detailed the 2 a.m. disruption. Then the real bombshell dropped. One of my mom's friends was a paralegal at the family court, and she remembered Carol's divorce. Apparently, Carol had received a $500,000 settlement from her ex-husband, plus alimony. She posted the public records. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. People started asking why Emma needed free housing when Carol was sitting on $500,000. Why was my working-class success being used to subsidize their upper-middle-class lifestyle? Carol deleted the post, but screenshots were already circulating. Meanwhile, Marcus had filed our countersuit and motion to dismiss. He'd also sent a cease and desist letter regarding the harassment of my tenants. But the real genius move was what he did next. Your father claimed Emma suffered damages from lost opportunities, he explained. So I did some digging. Emma hasn't applied for a single job in 2 years. She hasn't submitted her portfolio to any galleries. She hasn't even tried to sell her art online. We're going to demand discovery of her job search records, her finances, everything. Let's see how committed they are to this lawsuit when Emma has to explain under oath why she needs free housing. They dropped the lawsuit within a week. Update 4. The aftermath, 2 months later. The legal drama was over, but the family fallout continued. Emma pled down to misdemeanor trespassing and got community service. From what I heard through the family grapevine, she was furious that Carol wouldn't pay for a better lawyer. Apparently, there was a massive fight when Emma demanded access to her share of Carol's divorce settlement, and Carol admitted she'd spent most of it on the house, cars, and lifestyle maintenance. The house of cards was crumbling. Dad, faced with the reality that Carol had been lying about their finances while he paid for everything, started questioning what else she'd lied about. Turned out, quite a lot. Emma wasn't 24, she was 27. She hadn't graduated from art school, she'd dropped out junior year and they'd been pretending she graduated to save face. The gallery showing she was preparing for? Complete fiction. Their marriage imploded. Dad moved out and filed for divorce. Carol tried to claim she'd given up her career to support him. What career? She'd been a receptionist, but thanks to the very public Facebook debacle, everyone knew about her hidden assets. The divorce is still ongoing, but from what I hear, it's ugly. Emma, meanwhile, had a moment of actual consequence. The arrest record did affect her. She couldn't pass background checks for the retail jobs she finally started applying for. The community service requirement meant she had to actually show up somewhere and work for the first time in her life. And with Dad and Carol's marriage imploding, her free ride was over. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Last week, I got a call from Emma. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "James," she said, and her voice sounded different. Tired. Adult, maybe, for the first time. I wanted to apologize. I stayed silent, waiting. I know what I did was wrong. All of it. The entitlement, the trespassing, trying to force you to give me something you worked for. I've been talking to a therapist, court-ordered, but still, and I'm starting to see how messed up my thinking was. "Okay," I said carefully. "I'm not asking for anything," she continued quickly. "I just wanted you to know that I get it now. You worked for everything you have. You sacrificed. And I tried to take advantage of that. It wasn't fair." "No," I agreed. "It wasn't. I got a job," she said. "It's just fast food, but it's something. And I'm looking for a room to rent. A real one, that I'll pay for myself." "Good for you," I said, and I meant it. Maybe someday, when I've proven I've changed, we could grab coffee? Like actual step-siblings. I thought about it. Maybe. Someday. But Emma. Yeah. If you ever come near my building again without an invitation, I will call the police. She actually laughed. Fair enough. Update 5. Where things stand now, 6 months later. It's been 6 months since that Christmas dinner that started everything, and life has settled into a new normal. My apartment building is thriving. All 4 units are still occupied by the same tenants, who have become almost like an extended family. Mrs. Chen brings me homemade dumplings whenever I stop by for repairs. Mike and his wife asked me to be their baby's godfather. There's a real sense of community there, which is worth more than any amount of rent. I've actually managed to save enough for a down payment on a second property, a duplex this time. I'm closing on it next month. My real estate business has also picked up, partly because of the publicity from the family drama. Several clients specifically said they wanted an agent who couldn't be pushed around, and partly because I can finally focus on work without family interference. My relationship with my mom has never been stronger. She told me she was proud of how I handled everything, and we've started having weekly dinners. She's even dating someone new, a nice guy who owns a small construction company. He's offered to help with renovations on my new duplex at cost, which is amazing. As for my dad's side of the family, it's complicated. Dad and Carol's divorce was finalized last month. Carol got the house but has to sell it to pay the lawyers. Dad moved into a modest apartment and has been doing some soul-searching. He sent me a letter, an actual handwritten letter, apologizing for everything. Not just the recent stuff, but for abandoning Mom and me, for trying to force his new family on me, for not respecting my accomplishments. I haven't responded yet. I'm not ready. Maybe I never will be. But I didn't throw the letter away either. Emma has surprised everyone. She kept the fast food job and got promoted to shift manager. She's renting a room in a shared house with 3 other people, and from what I hear through mutual acquaintances, she's actually paying her rent on time. She's even selling some of her art online. Small pieces, nothing fancy, but she made her first legitimate sale last month and posted about it with genuine pride rather than her usual pretension. She sent me a screenshot of the sale with a simple, "Look, I'm a working artist now," smiling face with smiling eyes, and I sent back a thumbs up. It's not much, but it's progress. The extended family has mostly retreated into embarrassed silence. A few relatives reached out to apologize for jumping to conclusions, but most just pretend nothing happened. That's fine with me. I learned who my real family is, and it's not about blood, it's about respect, support, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Reflections. Looking back on everything, I sometimes wonder if I could have handled it differently. Maybe been less harsh, more understanding. But then I remember Mike's terrified wife, Mrs. Chen, being targeted for a scam, my tenants being harassed, and I know I did the right thing. The irony isn't lost on me that in trying to take my building, they lost everything. Their marriage, their home, their reputation, their comfortable life built on lies and hidden money. Meanwhile, by protecting what I'd earned, I gained more than I ever expected. Stronger relationships with people who matter, a thriving business, and most importantly, self-respect. I think the biggest lesson from all of this is that family isn't an obligation, it's a choice. You choose to treat each other with respect, to support without enabling, to love without losing yourself. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is say no and let people face the consequences of their choices. My building isn't just an investment property anymore. It's a symbol of everything I've worked for and everything I've refused to compromise on. Every rent check that comes in, every repair I make, every thank you from a tenant reminds me that I made the right choice. Would I do it all again? Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, I can look at myself in the mirror and know that everything I have, I earned. And no one, not even family, has the right to take that away. Sometimes justice isn't about revenge or making others suffer. Sometimes it's just about standing your ground, protecting what's yours, and letting the truth come to light. The rest tends to take care of itself.